Laminate flooring is a relatively easy DIY task to do. It's a great way and inexpensive way of creating a new look to your room. These particular boards are standard size, they're 6mm wide, and they've got like a veneered finish to give a real wood look. They're a tongue and groove click fit method. That means you need no glue or clamps to be able to install these. Now this click fit method couldn't be any simpler. If you look closely on one board, it's tongue and groove, and this is the tongue edge, and then the opposite side there is the groove. And all they more or less do is interlock in like a large jigsaw. You slip the tongue into the groove and simply lock it down, and it's in position. You start on the left hand side and then work your way across all the way to the right. Now your last piece on the right hand side, you need to put it in. As you can see, it's a little bit too long, so you are going to need to cut a little bit off that. Just get your tape measure, take a measurement of the piece. Now before you transfer that onto your board and cut it, you must bear in mind that you need to put a minimum of a 10mm expansion gap all the way around the outside. Because of the different changes of climate in the room, sometimes it can expand and contract back to its normal size, and it just needs that little bit of give at the sides. Otherwise, it could end up bulging in the air summertime. Now I've got my measurements on the board, I'm just going to get a block and square that up and then chop that piece off. Now I'm going to use a small circular saw. You can cut this by hand with a handsaw, you can use a jigsaw or a chop saw, whatever you prefer, but don't forget safety specs at all times. Okay, now that's cut to size. Now we said these are click fit tongue and groove methods, but all four sides of them have got a tongue and groove on there. So what you must do is click it in the one side there, but then getting it into that side is a little bit more difficult. But there is this handy little bar which will help. It's a little bit like a crowbar. It's got a hook on the one end, that's going to hook onto the edge that you've cut, and you're simply going to hammer it this end and it's going to drag it into position. What you do is you put a little bit of weight on that with your foot, make sure your groove there are lined up, and then you can just start to gently hammer that into position. And as you can see, that closes the joint. Once you've got your first couple of rows in position, you'll find you'll pick up a rhythm and it'll go a lot quicker and easier. This manufactured laminate floor is quick and easy to clean and requires no maintenance, and it can also make the inexperienced DIYer look good. Now when fitting laminate floorings, it's vital to stagger all the joints. You don't want none of them running in a straight line. So this long piece, we cut a small piece off for that end. We don't want to waste any either, so the offcut, which is the bigger bit, we start this end. The cut will go into that wall and be covered up, and it'll still leave the tongue and groove on that end to continue the row. Now another tool that you'll find handy when fitting laminate floor is a hammering block, and as you can see, it's got a little groove in it, exactly the same as the wood itself, and it allows you to hammer it. And what this does, it doesn't damage the board. The beauty about laminate floors, you've got a variety of different looks, from hard to softwood, even to slate and tile effect. Once you've completed one room, you'll find it so easy to fit, you'll want to take on the rest of the house. Now, as you can see, the last piece is too wide to actually go in, so it needs trimming down. When you're measuring up for this, you've got to take into consideration you still need your expansion gap along that wall. Remember, that has to be around the whole room. So what we do is we take a measurement of what it is, then deduct 10mm and transfer that measurement onto your board. And then you do the exact same further up. You might find it differs a little bit if the wall runs out. Again, transfer that measurement on there. I'm going to get another board now, lay that over the top, so it's crossing one mark and it's also crossing the other mark. Taking a pen, striking a line all the way up there, and then that's the piece I need to trim off. So again, I'm going to do this using the circular saw. Not forgetting your safety specs. And hopefully that should interlock into position, leaving us a nice healthy expansion gap all the way along the side. So now the final piece of the jigsaw is complete, or should I say laminate flooring. But for me, the icing on the top of the cake is to finish off all around the edges and hide that expansion gap. As you've probably noticed, this particular room isn't finished off, I've still got to put my skating boards against there, and that's going to cover up that gap. But however, at home, if you've got your skating boards in place, you must still leave that 10mm expansion gap all the way around the room. And what you do, you hide it with a thing called a quad ped, and that's simply just tacked against the skating board. And that's how easy it is to do laminate flooring.